Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today I'm doing something a little bit different. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 10 graphic novels that belong in every public library. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Now, this is a list that's different than other lists I've had on the channel. I've had my top 10 favorite books coming out in June or July, my favorite Image comics, the best DC comics to get people to read particular characters, the top 10 Marvel Omnis for new collectors and readers, the top 10 DC absolutes that everybody should have in their library. This is about getting books to people to get them to read. And what better place than a public library? My friend Heather is a librarian, and her library has a certain amount of funds for graphic novels. So she asked me, what are the 10 books you would have added to the public library? And I took that seriously because that was 3 months ago. And I have been tinkering, not every day, but I have been moving things around, what works. The hardest part is separating myself from the work, like how much it means to me, how amazing I think the stories are. So this isn't a list of my favorite stories or what I think is going to be life-changing for everybody. This is a list of books that I think every library should have based on the 40 plus years of just reading comics and meeting fans and talking to so many people. And of course, part of it is also volunteering at book fairs to see like the kids, because that's where the future of this hobby is. I don't even consider it a hobby. I consider this just a part of life. Is reading is very essential, and having kids read is very important to the future of graphic novels and books in general. But we are talking about graphic novels because that's what this channel focuses on. So before I get started, I do want to say I take this very seriously. It's not my personal list, like my favorites. Just keep that in mind. These are just books that I think every library should have. Now, it's a hard enough task, but what I'm also going to be doing on June 16th, Sunday, June 16th, live at 2:30 p.m., I have assembled a group of people, of panelists, that will be joining me with their own top 5, and I'll be breaking my 5 from this top 10. And together we're going to build a list of 10 books, and whatever we come up with, I will be donating to the local library. So big thank you to Heather for asking me and putting this task on my plate. I love it. It was challenging, and it's been an eye-opener, honestly. So let's go ahead and start, but I'm cheating a little bit with my first book, and I'll explain why here in a second. Smash that like button, though. I forgot that. Take it so seriously, I forgot to remind you all to smash that like button. That's so important. Okay, now let's start. No matter what 10 books we end up donating, this is going in there as number 11, because I believe this is a book that every library should have, and that is Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. This book will open your eyes and horizons as to reading comics. You'll never read comics the same way after reading this book. It teaches you the lessons on how to read, the basic stuff like from panel to panel, and then of course the just composition of the drawings. It makes you appreciate art in a whole new level. You'll find different artists that you didn't like before. You'll find loving their artwork just based on the simplicity of the panel layouts. It's an amazing book, and I always recommend it when talking about graphic novels. And for the people that are here going, hey, that's not, graphic novels, you're talking about comics. Look, that term has changed. Don't blame me, blame the book outlets. That term changed in the early aughts. Probably to get more people to read comics, and I'm okay with that. But absolutely including this as number 11. 100%. And anybody that hasn't read this, please do yourself a favor and buy this book and read it. Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Completely will change the way you look at comics. I mentioned how kids are the future of reading graphic novels, so I am starting the list with this beautiful book. This is Jeff Smith's Bone, published by Cartoon Books. He self-published it. It is a masterpiece of storytelling. This introduces you to 3 little characters that have been kicked out of their own little town called Boneville. So you meet Phone Bone, Phony Bone, and Smiley Bone. And it's a simple story about how these 3 got kicked out and why. And then when they get separated and meet different people like Thorn and her grandma and the Great Red Dragon, and who is this nemesis that's coming after them and why they got kicked out. The world building here, it is just a prime example of how to do it properly. This is definitely a book I consider all ages. It's the scary aspects aren't really that scary, but if you feel like you need to skim through it, make sure your kid's okay reading it, that's completely fine. But it's definitely a book that I would put in all ages. It's beautiful, it's full of heart, and it's easy to get into. It's easy to follow these simplistic looking characters and their adventures. And I say simplistic not in a demeaning kind of way, because that's the beauty of this book. The simple style fools you into thinking you're going to read just a comic strip. But it's an expanded comic strip, and I love that about it. So absolutely 100%, this is one of my recommendations. And one that is available in trade paperbacks. There are black and white editions, which is the way it was originally printed. And then, of course, the color editions. They come in slim size. There's all-in-ones. And, you know, if this book gets chosen at the end on June 16th to be representative of the top 10, I'll probably get the all-in-one edition because it feels like you need to complete the journey. And it is a beautiful journey. Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, published by DC Comics. And I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes right now saying, dude, this is on everybody's list, whatever. There's a reason why this is on most people's list, not everybody's. I'm not an absolutist like DC. Because it rightly deserves to be on the list. This was a game changer for graphic novels. This elevated comics to a whole new level, and anybody that lived through that time can attest to this. Even if they hate the book, they can tell you just how many people came from reading prose novels, because it kind of fools you into thinking this is just a comic, but there's a comic inside a comic, and there's a prose inside of this book too. Beautiful. Yes, but getting people to come in from just reading novels to reading comics. And then, of course, when the trade paperback, one of the earliest graphic novels for DC to just stay in print forever, came out, yes, that's one of their best sellings and one that they keep on in print every year. And there are different formats available of this book. It's brutal, it's real, it's unforgiving, but it's amazing. And regardless of whether people will end up hating it or just loving it, I think it definitely needs to be in a library to at least give you the option to say, hey, look at me. Look at the smiley face. Look at the clock. You don't need a card catalog. They still use that? I don't know. To find this book. Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. If there ever is a graphic novel that I want people to check out to explain the beauty of the Marvel universe, the world outside your window, I can't think of a better book than to do it with this. It's beautifully painted. The artwork in here deserves to be on murals, it deserves to be in paintings and museums, but it is inside of a comic book, which is just mind-blowing. And this is all told through the eyes of Phil Sheldon. And that's the wonderful part about this, is that through Phil, who's just a photojournalist in New York City, he gets to experience the Marvel universe, the world outside of his window, through the different decades, whether the 60s, the 70s, and big story, iconic stories like the coming of Galactus, the death of Gwen Stacy, the coming of the X-Men. All of it is told through the perspective of humans that are experiencing these new superheroes in their world. And the art and the story just makes them bigger than life. And it's one that I think is so easy for people to fall in love with some of these characters because you see it through the eyes of someone like you. You see it through somebody that doesn't have superpowers. And I think it's an easy access, or at least a gateway to the beauty of the Marvel Universe. And I Absolutely. This one I think was one that stayed on the list, and there were a couple of books that stayed on the list from the beginning. As soon as Heather asked me what books would you have on this list, this was one of them, and available in trades and many different formats, but marbles. Mouse by Art Spiegelman, published by Pantheon Books. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but out of the entire list, this is the most controversial book in here. So much so that YouTube last year was pulling down videos and demonetizing people just for the cover and talking about the subject. And I cannot believe we live in a world where people were banning this book from libraries. Like, how? I don't understand. But this is an autobiographical story about Art and his father, but it's all done through a cartoony way to kind of... Actually, it makes it more human, honestly, when they're drawn as mice. So this is all the story of Art's father and living through World War II and the Holocaust, and just all the things that happened through the atrocities of war, then of course the concentration camps. And I understand it's not an easy subject, but it's an important subject, one that we must always talk about, so we don't let things like this happen. This book right here, it's hard to give it like a young adult rating or something like that, because I think, you know, being in high school is okay to read a book like this. I know my daughter had seen Schindler's List when she was in the 8th grade, but every parent is different, and I understand, you know, you yourself have to judge what your kids can watch and read. I would be completely okay with my kiddos when they were in middle school reading something like this, because I read it in middle school, and it opened my eyes to the idea that comics are so much more powerful than I thought. Yes, comic books are a wonderful escape, but sometimes that realism that needs to bring you back is equally as important. And I can't think of another book, even if my other choices don't make it into the final 10 list, I will fight tooth and nail to keep this one on there, because I feel like it is the most important book on the list and one that should be in every library shelf, and that is Mouse. Akira by Katsuhiro Otomo and published by Kodansha Comics. This book has had many printings in America. Marvel published it through their Epic line, and then Dark Horse published it, and now finally Kodansha is publishing it in the traditional right to left format. And I thought hard about this one because I wanted to include this book in there. There were a couple of other choices too, because there's just so much manga, and I feel like a lot of kids gravitate towards that. I mean, you could go the route of One Piece, you can go the route of Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia. But I feel like if you make this book accessible in a library, those kids that were checking out things like Pokemon and Naruto and growing up with, and I'm not saying that stuff is kiddish, I love that stuff too, but once they hit that middle school year and they want to check out something a little more mature, this is the one that's going to blow them away. And let me tell you, it was not an easy task to pick a particular manga, but I had to go with this one. It's a beautiful story. It's got futuristic machinery, it's got heavy sci-fi elements, it's got likable protagonists, it's got some amazing villains, it's got betrayal, love, everything you could put into one book. And I know a lot of my friends got into manga because of Akira, and keep in mind my age too. I'm 46. We went to go see Akira when he came out here in America. We had to drive 6 hours. Anyway, a lot of them were like, "Hey, you know, there's a comic book of this through Marvel Comics," and sure enough, they got into Marvel Comics, and a lot of them still read Western comics and manga because of that movie, and it made them go and check out the comic. And I cannot express just how important it is for something like this to be in a library, to be able to be checked out by those wondering early teens that want something else besides, you know, your regular shonen type of story. And I know there's an array of different manga out there, but this is the one that I would definitely put on in a bookshelf in a library. Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli, published by DC Comics. This graphic novel, available in trades and available in big oversized editions, deluxe editions, is the template for every great comic origin story. Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli just lay out a perfect, almost movie. You know what? I will go ahead and say, yes, almost like a storyboard of a movie. The perfect storyboard for an origin story of a superhero. A lot of TV shows and animated shows and movies borrowed heavily from this. Not just Batman ones, but just origin stories that need to be told. And they do such an amazing job of telling the first year of Batman and how great he wasn't at being Batman because he's Bruce Wayne first, losing his parents, and making him that vigilante that people fell in love with. And I can't think of a better origin story than Batman Year One. And I can't think of a better place for a librarian being asked, excuse me, where's a good place to start reading comics than Batman Year One? This will open up their eyes to other superheroes and other origin stories, but this is the one where they want to begin. Black Hole by Charles Burns, published by Pantheon Books. This is a horror book. This is definitely one for older teens. And I wanted to add a book in here that has a creepy factor, a horror factor. And yes, I could have copped out and said, well, look, Walking Dead is very popular. And I thought about that. It's very popular TV show, many TV shows. A lot of people would want to come and check it out, but I wanted something in there to really spook people, to show you the power of the medium. And I couldn't think of anything more. I thought of a lot, don't get me wrong. This list changed a lot, but at the end of the day, I chose Black Hole. And a lot of it has to do with the creepiness of that overly used ink that Charles Burns uses in his artwork, almost making it look like a wood carving. He tells this story set in Seattle about this STD that is being transferred, and all the kids are just calling it the bug amongst teenagers. And it's not your average STD. It is causing a lot of mutation. It could be something like a little mouth. It's disgusting, by the way. A little mouth growing at the bottom of your soles of your feet, or it could just be mutating your entire body, making you look like the Elephant Man. And it's that body horror that you fear. It's the fear of the unknown. What is the cause of this? There's so many questions that you're going to be asking. And I really do feel like it's a book that belongs in a library, because you want to show that graphic novels are so much more than just superheroes, than, probably books that they've heard about, everybody else talk about, including on this list, like Watchmen. Because if they're into horror, this is a freaking amazing story that they're going to love. And one that I cannot recommend high enough on the list. It makes it in my list of like top horror books or graphic novels I recommend to people. And at the end of the day, I guess it made it on the list as the best horror representation to put in a library. Miss Marvel by G. Willow Wilson and Adrian Alfona, published by Marvel Comics. This is the only book on the list that I cheated a little bit with. Now, let me explain. Reason number one, this was Miss Lydia, my oldest daughter's first comic that she read. She read my omnibus. Like her first graphic novel, her first book, her first comic, she read my omnibus. And cover to cover, read it in 2 days. Loved it. And she was only 8 years old at the time. That's insane. And then later she expanded Transformers and manga and Chainsaw Man. Anyway. But through her eyes, I just saw how much she enjoyed. We talked about what she enjoyed out of it. The character, the brightness, the hopefulness. Now, point number two. I love volunteering at my kids' schools, especially when they were younger and they had book fairs. Scholastic book fairs. When I was a kid, man, you were king when you had a $5 bill and you got into the Scholastic book fair. You got posters and comics, and, well, maybe that was just me. No, a lot of my friends got the comics too. When I would volunteer, one of the things that I would always see is little kids, a lot of my daughter's friends, picking up Miss Marvel, the little digest-sized book that Marvel had been putting out, and buying it. And then the following year I would come back and I would see the same thing. Yes, there's Captain Underpants and there's Miles Morales, and DC had their DC, what was it, the Ink line. But the one book I remember kids just talking about and picking up and smiling was Miss Marvel. So I got to talk to them when after volunteering 1 year. I had lunch with my daughter and some of her friends, and I asked them, what is it about Miss Marvel that they liked? And they love the colors and the artwork. And sure enough, it has a little bit of that manga flair that kids are drawn to. The big eyes and big, ridiculous mouths when people get excited. I mean, even her own powers are about getting big. And it has that certain dash of innocence that kids look for, while also threats in the world, not just in the shape of supervillains and who to trust. I thought it was really difficult, and I'm sure people are like, why not Spider-Man? Why not Wolverine? Why not X-Men? I know there's no Chris Claremont on this list, but it's not about my personal taste. It's what I've seen and experienced, and also what I think belongs in a library. Absolutely, yeah, this is a lot of fun. It's the opposite of Batman. Batman dark and gritty, and if you love that, that's the one for you. This is bright, full, and cheerful with a dash of maybe some threats happening. Essex County by Jeff Lemire, published by Top Shelf Productions. If you had asked me 10 years ago to do this list, no way would I have put a Jeff Lemire comic in there. Not because I don't like his stories, but it was mainly his artwork. But in 10 years' time, his art has grown on me, and his stories have hit a lot different. And it could be because I'm getting older, or it could be that I'm a father, and I don't know what it is, but maybe I'm just at that right time for this to hit. And a lot of my viewers love his stuff, but for me, it just took a while to get into it, and I've been getting a lot into it here in the last 10 years. This is an anthology story, all set in Essex County, Ontario, Canada, where Lemire just crafts an amazing study of a community throughout the years, connecting the lives of these people through different stories in here, and making it all about these particular folks that lived in Essex County or live in Essex County. It is beautiful. It will make you cry. It will make you laugh. It will make you cheer for the good guys. You can find out for yourself who the good guys are by reading the book. Black and white, and I know that turns some people off, but hey, there's a whole lot of other comics out there if you can't get into this one. It's an amazing, beautiful story, and I cannot recommend high enough. There was a hardcover available of this, but it's easy to find the trade paperback at Top Shelf. That who knows, maybe one day they'll reprint a hardcover of Essex County. But I can actually see people picking this up that, enjoy indie movies, not indie movies like Wes Anderson, but enjoy a slice of life story with a lot of heart and a lot of pain, because that is part of life. Last, but certainly not least on the list, is Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson, published by Andrews McMeel Publishing. Now, some people might be like, dude, that's a comic strip. Get that off the list. This is found in the graphic novels section of any library and any bookstore. Take it up with them. The term has changed. I'm sorry. What can I say? Yes, it is a comic strip, which is exactly why it belongs in every library, because the easiest way to get someone to read are non-connecting stories and just fun and full of imagination stories. And that's what Calvin and Hobbes gives you. When I was a kid, I would daydream instead of doing my work. My kids aren't watching this, looking out the window. And much like the characters in here, I would daydream about my imaginary best friend coming and taking me on adventures. And then when I found the comic strip in America, because we didn't get this comic strip in Peru, I fell in love with Bill Watterson's characters. Like I mentioned, it's not a long overall arc. There's no arch nemesis that they're fighting. Yes, they are fighting some at times, but they're just told through like 4 panels or 3 panels sometimes, and the story's over. And that's what makes this the perfect candidate to be put in a library, because you can just read 2 or 3 pages and then move on, but you're reading, and I think that's what's important. And you know what? And if you enjoy reading comic strips like this, you may want to expand your horizons and check out other books where you can now follow the sequential art through frames because of comic strips. So of course I'm recommending this one. And that's my list. So if you're interested in any of these and you want to donate some to your local library, by all means, check out our sponsors where you can buy some of these books.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. What would your list look like? Come back on June 16th. We're doing a live episode that you can join in and share your thoughts. And that is at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's not just me, but it's a group of panelists from other YouTube channels that will be talking about what books they think belong in a library. And we will break it down and discuss each book. And at the end of the video, we will choose 10 books to donate that I'll be donating to a local public library, to my friend's Heather's library. But let me know what you would have added, what you would have taken away, because I love a difference of opinion, and I do want to know where people are coming from too. It could be because you did enjoy it or your kid didn't enjoy it, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments down below. But that's it, everybody. Keep on reading. Much love.